Hello everyone, Lauren from A Girl and Her Wool here. Welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited to be back here today. I have been planning and filming this dye with me for quite a bit of time now, and so I'm excited to just get this up and out to you guys. So I will say off the bat, this one is a little bit different and it has a bit of a cliffhanger at the end. So make sure you're tuned in for this whole video to kind of see what I'm talking about. I'm excited to show you this yarn we have behind me. I'm excited to dye it with you. So if you're kind of new here, a dye with me video is I kind of take some sort of thought concept, dye up some yarn, and we just kind of talk about the results, what we change, what we like about it. And yeah, so if you're interested in that, make sure you're subscribed here to my channel so you don't miss any future dye with me's. I also do show me dyeing up during the yarn club reveals every month, as well as some of the behind the scenes day in the life type videos. So make sure you're tuned into everything. Even if I'm not doing the formal dye with me's as often, I still am showing my dyeing almost as much as I used to. So anyway, happy to have you along for this journey. So I'm going to do quite a bit of voiceover of the dyeing itself. So I'm not going to talk about it a ton here before we head to the dye pans, but I just wanted to set the stage a little bit. So we are going to be over dyeing today, and I know I've done that before, and I think I did it quite recently, but I did a twist on it. So the yarn we're going to be over dyeing is Monarch, which is one of my regular colorways. I just had a bit of it in inventory, and so I pulled it, and I thought it would make a really great palette to over dye because it's a fairly neutral base. It's a white base that just has some speckles of oranges and peaches and black and gray. And so I thought it would be cool to kind of see how that base and speckles show through the over dyeing. But again, we're gonna kind of do a little twist on it. So that's what you're gonna see in the pan, and I'll talk more about it when the dyeing starts. So the other aspect of it is actually that I'm going to be doing this blind. So I've done this before, and I'll leave a link to the video where I did this in the past down in the description box because it was really fun. So when I did this last time, I jumbled up all of my dyes and then I blindly picked them, and the results were kind of really interesting and probably gave me way too much confidence to do this in the future. What I love about doing the blind dyeing, meaning that I'm not blindfolded, I am watching what I dye, but I'm just not picking the dyes that I'm using. I'm kind of letting fate choose the dyes, is that I really get to push myself and really see colors that maybe I wouldn't normally pair together and see how they blend, or if they look good in a skein together, or if they don't look good in a skein together. And it's a really fun way to do this. I mean, I do this quite a bit with my mystery minis, but it's fun to do it, you know, kind of in these more larger scale batches. So anyway, I will leave a link to that below if you want to check out the results of that vlog, that dye with me. But yes, I did do this. I did use a random number generator. Instead of jumbling them all up again and making a mess, I just did a random number generator and picked them that way, and applied the yarn as is. So I applied the dye in that order. So as I pulled a skein, I applied it, and I'll talk more about how I did that in the video. With that intro, let's head to the dye pan and dye up the yarn. So my goal for this dye with me is to try and keep as much of this in real time as possible. Normally I speed it up, and I thought it'd be fun to really kind of show things more in real time. I'll probably cut a little bit here and there, but in general you'll see that. I also never really show me adding the skeins to the pan. I don't think. I usually hit record afterwards, but anyway, you're getting a good sense of what Monarch looks like here. So again, kind of like a lighter base with orange and kind of some reddish colors, and then grays and black speckled on top, but overall pretty light color. So I thought it was a good candidate to do for this. You can see I'm laying them in kind of side by side, but they're folded in half lengthwise. And My reasoning for laying them that way was, so my goal for this dyeing is to kind of do a gradient, and I'll link to the vlog down below where I did a gradient across skeins like this in the past, and it had some really cool results, and so I thought it would be fun to kind of do that again today. So I did not press play before applying the first color, so I'll come back to that in a second, but I just wanted to just mention again. So my idea for laying them kind of side by side horizontally was so that I can then apply the dye diagonally, almost like you see it now, and kind of get a gradient across, but make sure that we're hitting all of the skeins, you know, kind of randomly, so it's not like the first color got hit by one and so on. So anyway, to start talking about the dyeing here, I mentioned this before, but I used a random number generator in order to come up with what dye I was using. So the first color I used was kind of like a deep pink purple color. If you saw my February colors of the month, that was one of the main colors that was used in the romance collection. So kind of neat that I got it here too as my first pick. The second is kind of this blue greenish color, like a light bluish green color. And again, I applied it diagonally. That way I'm gonna hit multiple skeins with it, but I'm not doing a ton of dye, and you guys will see that at the end when we analyze it. I'm really just kind of doing it lightly. I was okay with letting a lot of Monarch show through, and so I really didn't do a ton of it. But you can see in that top left corner, I applied a lot of that dark purple and kind of then did it more lighter, kind of going out. Starting with the blue again. I kind of blended them and overlaid them a little bit and then kind of brought the blue out. I'm not speckling anything, I'm really kind of putting the dye in to the water to make it more of like a dye bath in a way. So no speckling, just kind of applying the dyes in liquid form essentially. I am using them in powder form, but making sure they get dunked underwater so they're kind of more as a liquid. So I was pleased with these first two colors. I know that purple pink is showing up pretty dark, but it's a good purple color. It would work well with kind of a light blue, so I was excited to kind of start with that. This next color, I believe, is, it's gonna look really yellow when I apply it to the skeins, but it's kind of more of a neutral, and as it kind of heats up, it becomes more of a neutral color. So yeah, again, it's going to show kind of pretty yellow, but it'll blend in, or as it heats up, it'll kind of be more of a neutral color. Again, we'll see more of this when we look at the end, in that it doesn't really cover, you know, it's not really necessarily like a great over-dyeing color, but it's nice because it adds a little bit more color to it without completely changing the base of the skein, which is nice because, like I said at the beginning, I like having Monarch as the base. You can also see I kind of got away a little bit from the diagonal. I was kind of mostly hitting a few skeins, so that's kind of why I was like going down the edge and something like that, just to kind of add the color to a few more skeins there. So I am showing applying the dye in real time, but I am cutting out some of the wait time in between. I didn't necessarily wait for each color to set. I liked the idea of them blending together again. I was going for a gradient, and I think it's a really pretty one that you're starting to see here. I think those colors work well as a gradient, and something for me to keep in mind in the future. But again, I am cutting out little bits of the waiting. So I'm not necessarily waiting for them all to set necessarily, but I am kind of blending them a little bit is what I'm getting at here. So this next color that we're applying is actually kind of, I think, like a dark blue. It shows up as purple at first, but again, as it heats up, it kind of turns more blue. All right, so at this point I am going to flip the skeins around. I didn't reorder them or anything. I left them in the same order that they were in currently, but I just flipped them around. So literally just showing what was underneath before and bringing that to the top, but otherwise everything in the pan will stay kind of exactly as is. As I lift the skeins up, you can see there's a little bit of dye that kind of moves around. You saw a little bit of reddish, but as it goes on, I think you know, a lot of the dye did get soaked up. Like you can see there, the water's pretty clear. So not too much not too much dye hanging around, kind of waited for it to set before I did this, but just flipping it once. I forgot to mention this at the beginning, so now is a good time to do it. In this pan, there's 6 skeins of yarn. 5 of them are on my BFL sock base, and 1 of them is on my merino sock base. So just kind of wanted to point that out as well. Otherwise, they're all 100-gram skeins, fingering weight yarn. And the other thing I was going to point out too was there's 6 skeins in this pan. That's quite a bit. Normally I wouldn't put so many, but again, I wanted to do that gradient look, and I wanted to keep a lot of monarch in the skeins. Again, keep that in mind when I go through the finished results, because we're really not hitting a ton of the skeins. So yeah, kind of keep that in mind that I did that on purpose when I talk about the skeins later on. But otherwise, again, every dye that I applied so far was based on a random number generator, where I had my dyes in, I have them all lined up, and then I did like Google's random number generator, and applied the dyes that way. So I'm continuing on with that. So I flipped them over, and I'll continue using the random number generator to come up with the next color dye I should be using. I did not personally select any of these that we used. So you'll see me start applying the colors here. I think the first one was like a very teal turquoise type of color. And you'll see I try to be really cognizant of going up on the diagonal. So I don't really go across much. I kind of really go up across a few skeins versus kind of hitting that first skein all on the left side. So you'll see me kind of be a little bit more diligent about making sure that I'm hitting it on that diagonal. And again, it would have been kind of nice to remember that when I was doing the final analysis, but you guys will be able to spot it all on your own later when we look at the finished skeins. I have to say I love this view of it. I love seeing all of those different colors. So keep in mind, we haven't added any orange to the pan. All that is coming through from Monarch, and it just, all of the different colors we're adding is really kind of showing it, and I feel like it's bringing out that orange even more. So this color that we are applying now is a green, and we will definitely be spending quite a bit of time talking about this particular green later on when we look at the finished skeins. It's a lot brighter than I think the camera is picking it up as at this moment. I think the top left of that of the view just is a little bit darker with where the light hits, but we will be talking about that green very much so at the end, so stick around to hear more about that green and what I have to say about it. So you will see as we continue adding colors here that I think I missed recording one here too. There was kind of like a neutral yellow in the middle there, and now we kind of get into this red, and kind of with that, a lot of that orange sticking out from Monarch. It just, this part definitely comes out like a rainbow, which is the cover photo of this video is a close-up of this pan. So we definitely have a rainbow here. We started with those blues into greens into like a yellow neutral color, and then bringing out the red, and of course the orange is sticking out. I talk a lot about this at the end when we analyze the finished skeins, but if I were kind of dyeing a gradient, I wouldn't necessarily want it in this sense, to finish it in this sense, unless I was specifically aiming for a rainbow. So this is kind of where the blind part of this is coming from, kind of picking the colors randomly. They're not necessarily the colors I would have chosen to do in this gradient. I probably also, I also picked a lot of colors. I could have stopped at any time or made the segments for each color bigger and not picked as many. So, that's kind of a learning experience to me, is when I'm doing these, I probably should have done like 3 colors across the top here, not 5, but that's a learning part of it.
And the reason why I kept going back with the red there was I felt like I wasn't saturating the yarn very much, so I just wanted to make sure I like really got a lot of red in there. So that's kind of why I did that. I could tell the skeins weren't really getting a ton underneath, and so I just went back and added more. So we're now at the last color, which is a bright blue, and again, this is one we'll talk about, kind of that bright blue and that red kind of being right there next to each other. So we'll talk about that more at the end, but yeah, that is the last of it. So yeah, we got kind of really very much a rainbow on the top here in this gradient. So kind of coincidental how random number generators work. The last thing I'm just going to mention here before we take a look at the skeins is that if I were dyeing these for the shop or something, I would move them around more. I would have flipped them over again. We really only hit 2 sides of the skeins. We didn't really hit all sides of the skeins. You'll definitely see that in a few minutes when we look at them, but I just wanted to not, I realized I had done a lot this way and I didn't want to move it around and add even more to it, especially after this rainbow. So we'll kind of see the effects of that and how that translated into the finished skeins, but that is the end of this dyeing session.
Okay, and welcome back. I hope you had fun dyeing. Let me know if you prefer when I just kind of speed up the dyeing and put some music on, or if you kind of like this real time and talking about it dyeing. I'd love to know. But yeah, let's take a look at the finished results, and then we're going to talk about next steps and what we think about this yarn. So I have the yarn line up here in the order that I'm pretty sure it was dyed in, and you definitely do get a gradient feel from it, which is pretty cool. I think it's fun to dye the yarn this way. Again, I kind of tried to dye the dyes diagonally, that way it would fade across the skeins versus having one color throughout all the skeins. And you'll definitely see that they are definitely multicolored, and yeah, so let's take a look. So let me hold them up first as the full 6 skeins, and then we'll kind of look at them individually. If I can hold them all up. Okay, so here they all are, and you definitely like feel that rainbow that we kind of did in that second layer, but we also have those dark skeins, I think dark colors probably that we had in the front corner, and then it kind of gets pretty brighter, and then we just have some of that blue at the end. That's the one I'm not sure about. So you guys saw this more recently, so you might know if that blue goes somewhere else in here, but you definitely see that rainbow, and I think that that looks really cool as a set. So let me kind of go through them really quickly here, just hold them up one at a time, and then we'll kind of see them. So we have kind of that darkish purplish red on here. We have the bright aqua turquoise colors, and then we start to get some of that green on here as well. So you really see in this first skein, even especially, how like rainbow-esque it is. This is the favorite of the pack for me. So this is the one that I actually really like the best. I like the kind of dark purples with the bright blue, and just that little bit of green is nice. It's moody, it's dark. I do like it. In terms of seeing Monarch in it, this one completely overshadowed Monarch. You can't tell that Monarch was the start of this color, like by any stretch of the imagination. And then just kind of holding it out. I mean, maybe in this section you get a little bit of it there where it didn't get dyed over. You get a little bit of the light with some orange, but yeah, you kind of completely lost Monarch in this color, which is totally fine, and kind of the whole point of the overdyeing. I mean, you do see some of the black, right? We didn't dye any black, so you do still get some of that, but you would not be able to tell this was Monarch. So yeah, so this one is actually my favorite of the bunch. It's the one from the corner, and maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe it was able to get a little bit more dye to it, which we'll kind of see in the other colors. Okay, so this one is second, and again, it gets even more kind of jumbled up in the colors. So in this one, you still have a little bit of those pinks and purple, like that purplish color in there. You get a little bit more of the green. You still get some of that turquoise, the green. You start to get some of that like neutral yellow color, and some of like the dark blue. So for this one, This one definitely has a lot more of the original color still in it, so you definitely have lighter sections. You definitely see the orange, which we did not dye with. We did not dye with orange, so anywhere you see it is really from, yeah, so I think every orange that you see is from the original colorway. So in here, especially through this section, you really see a lot. Now keep in mind, when we were dyeing, I purposely did it that way, right? Like I only over dyed them twice. There were a lot of skeins in the pan, and so I didn't, you know, completely saturate and cover it, and that's totally fine with me because it was a fun speckled color underneath, so I wanted that to show. So I'm okay with that. Again, this is a very colorful one, but to me, it's like missing a little bit more. Like you get a little bit of green, but like that's it. Like that is it, right? You get a little bit more here. To me, I would have loved seeing maybe if I used just a little bit more of each color and really made sure it hit the skein a little bit more versus having kind of the little splotches of it. Like I think if this were worked up, it would definitely work up very multicolored, but I don't think it would be very consistent, of course, throughout the whole skein, which again, dyeing it the way I did where I didn't flip it and dye consistently, of course, is going to give us that. So it makes for a really interesting skein, but this one just didn't come out colorful like enough. Not that I would have added more colors, just maybe more of each color. Kind of the same idea with this one, and this might have been too where we were kind of getting some of the lighter colors to dye. So in this one, again, you get the green still in there. You get a little bit of turquoise and a little bit, but otherwise this is like pretty much still, sorry, I wasn't holding it up while I was looking at it. This one is all still pretty much monarch with just a little bit of rainbow on it, which again is not a bad thing. Rainbow is a really, or monarch is a really pretty color, and getting these really fun bits of rainbow in there are really pretty. But again, it just didn't get hit by enough. Which again, and also thinking about it in the context of gradient, like you want some lighter sections, so again, in the whole context, I think that's okay. But my initial reaction to a lot of these skeins is like they need more. They need another layer, and again, we'll kind of talk about that at the end. So this one's even more so. This one is basically monarch with a little bit of red on there, and again, a little bit of the yellow and the green. So it just didn't get hit by, and honestly, I don't remember what came from the first round. I know the rainbow was like the second one, so I don't remember like the first layer, what this would have gotten hit with. But it basically just has kind of this red splotch to it, and then pretty much is just monarch everywhere else. Okay, this next one is the one that's on the merino sock base yarn. So again, it's very similar to the last one I just showed you, except it doesn't have the yellow and the green. It's just all red. It's all of the red and a little bit of the dark blue. So this is like if Monarch and Love Bite had a baby, it would be this. So it has, again, a lot of Monarch still showing. We get some of the red and then some of like that darker blue. And then again, we still see a lot of the speckles from Monarch and all of that. Okay, and then for this last one, we have less of the red and we just kind of get into the blue. So again, instead of it being like, you know, oh, I don't know, the bright red and the bright blue just didn't do it for me. This is probably my least favorite one of the bunch. So that's that one. So I know I ran through those pretty quickly. I'm going to talk about the results overall. I talked about some of the early skeins where you really saw a lot of the different colors. Some of these at the end just didn't have as much. And or you know, they kind of just had, this one has a lot of color in it, right? It's like that really pretty bright blue. But then it also, which I kind of hid in the tie here, has like that bright red in it. And I think if it were different colors, maybe this one would have been nicer, but probably, you know, again, my favorite is the first one where you get colors that kind of just go more together, and it makes like a really interesting skein. And then even in the second one, I think this one's just really pretty because it's so a little bit of everything. Like it really got hit really nicely with all the different colors. So again, just talking through the final results, overall I was not pleased with this set. If you didn't kind of get that from that short synopsis, when I saw it drying on the drying rack, I was really disappointed, really not happy with what I saw. And you know, I'll kind of talk about next steps next, in terms of like if this had been, you know, something I was dyeing up for the shop and not necessarily for a dye with me. So what's kind of different is I wanted to show you guys that result, and I think what's really interesting about showing this one is the fact that I didn't have control over it. I wanted to show you what that meant for the results. I think when I show yarn here on my channel, it's all a finished product that I'm like really proud of. Of course, I've always had dye with me's, but I was also always in control of what I was doing. And so if I saw something I wasn't really a fan of in the dye pan, I made the corrections then and there. And I think it's nice to kind of show this result of like, I'm not a fan of the results, but I have this yarn. I'm not going to just throw it in the trash. So like, what happens next? So we'll talk about that at the end. That's kind of like the cliffhanger part of this. But yeah, so overall I wasn't happy. My initial instinct was to just throw it back in the pan and kind of work on them a little bit more, but of course I wanted to show it to all of you. I mean, things that wouldn't have happened if I didn't stick to my rule of dyeing every single color that came out. It felt like a lot of the colors that I was getting are ones that I don't necessarily use on their own. So like that really bright green, I don't typically just apply that in the pan. That's a color that I use to blend. Like I felt like I was getting a lot of primary colors that I don't apply to colorways on their own. They're colors that I blend in bottles. I'm just like not a huge fan of like the bright neon green. I like some neon colors. I like neon pinks, neon like blues, but I'm not a fan of like neon green. And so I knew that was kind of gonna throw things. I knew the fact that it was like a rainbow was not going to work very well, because rainbows are kind of like their own set thing, right? Like you either dye a rainbow or you pick colors from the rainbow. You don't necessarily like purposely use all of the colors of a rainbow to like make a pleasing to the eye gradient. In my opinion, it's like made to be a rainbow gradient, right? So when that kind of happened, I knew that it was like gonna be a little weird and I wasn't gonna be a huge fan with it, but I went with it. I did the conditions that I was set to, and I think that that is really, really good. And it's good for me to know that, like, you know, that bright blue, because a lot of times I like to mix red and blue together or dye with red and blue together, because, you know, they blend to make purple. And so, you know, in my head, reds and blues kind of go together. But then when you get like the stark contrast of that bright blue with that bright red, they're not really like blending together at all. They're kind of the same tone, so they're kind of opposing. You know, in this case, would it have been better with like a light blue and a brighter red? Maybe. But it's just like a good reminder that if I am dyeing with blues and reds, to kind of make sure that they're not like fighting against each other and they really are partially blended. So that way they're not like bright red, bright blue. I kind of knew during it that I was doing things I wouldn't normally do. So without going on and on too much about this, one, I would love to know what you feel about the skeins, because sometimes maybe my eye is different than yours, and maybe colors that I'm drawn to are different than colors you're drawn to. So I'd love to know if there was a skein that stuck out to you. Leave me a comment below if that's true. But there is going to be a part 2 to this vlog, so I'm not in a place where I feel comfortable putting these skeins up in my shop. Again, I only will ever post and sell skeins that I am proud to put my label on, and these are not it. Again, in the next vlog, we will be over-dyeing these, so we'll talk about it more then. I'm not going to go into what I would do to each one of these skeins, but we're going to kind of go over them and make them something that we're proud of. So I hope you stay tuned for that. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment below with your thoughts on it. You know, do you disagree? Do you like this? Do you disagree in the sense that like you actually think all of these skeins are complete, or what are things you would change about them? What are some colors that maybe you stay away from, whether it's in your knitting or in your dyeing or your crocheting or painting, whatever it is that you use color for, that maybe you would push yourself to use more, or are you like, no, I'm good, like how I am with that bright green. I use that dye quite a bit, I'm not gonna lie. I use it a lot, I just don't use it on its own. So anyway, that is it. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the shocking conclusion to this dye with me. Is that the wording you would use on TV? Yeah, and I will see you here and on Instagram and in my shop update on Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So yeah, when you guys are seeing this, quick announcements: the sticker club for April renews tomorrow. So if you want to grab your April stickers and be part of the club, when you're in the club you get the exclusive sticker. Make sure you're signed up by tomorrow, March 10th. And otherwise, the Mystery Yarn Club is open through the 20th to start with the April clubs. So I'll be doing the shop reveal vlog next, the Mystery Yarn Club for March reveal next week, so make sure you check that out. And again, there's a shop update this weekend, and I'm going to be posting the colors of the month throughout this week, so make sure you're following me on Instagram so you don't miss out. I'm also working very much behind the scenes on all things March into spring boxes, so thank you so much to everybody who bought one. We sold out in like 7 hours. I can't believe it. I'm like still in shock about it. But anyway, I will talk to you guys soon, and have a great Wednesday or whenever you're watching this. Bye.